In this video, I'm going to give you guys my best take on what fantasy football players I believe you can expect to pass their fantasy projections for the upcoming season. I'm not going to list a lot of the guys that the other channels do because I think it's boring just to repeat the same people over and over and over again. Last year, I did the same video. I was about 50% with the overrated and underrated players. I'm going to make videos on both of those. So just so you guys have an idea, I'm not, gonna say I hit on this person last year. I hit about 50% with my takes. The first guy I want to mention that I feel like I haven't really seen many places is Tony Pollard. If you didn't see this offseason, there was almost immediately a report that they expect to potentially use Tony Pollard at wide receiver during a portion of the snaps, and he's also going to get his usual third down back or just backup halfback role that he gets behind Ezekiel Elliott. One thing to note about Tony Pollard is I don't expect there to be any chance of him starting if Zeke is healthy. There were times during the last 2 years where it was very debatable that Pollard was playing better than Zeke, and sometimes it was almost objective. But Jerry Jones absolutely loves Zeke. He loves the Zeke and Dak connection that he thinks is absolutely amazing. So there's no chance that we see Pollard start over Zeke. But he does get his touches as a backup. He gets quite a few touches in the game compared to a lot of other halfbacks. And if he's sliding in at wide receiver, he's going to get a lot more touches because they don't have many wide receivers. Gallup is injured out the start of the year. I think they have a rookie wide receiver who's debatably injured but is expected to be the wide receiver 2. I think you slot Tony Pollard in as the wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3 and having that kind of third down back role, catching all the passes out of the backfield, because I think they don't like Zeke for that role. I think there's a lot of promise to it. The main thing I'm trying to say here is I could see Tony Pollard getting a lot more catches this year because he's going to be playing a little bit of wide receiver and he's going to get his usual backfield carries. I could see him getting wide receiver eligibility and also being pretty good as a halfback, potentially halfback 2 or maybe even up there in the 1 conversation, depending on how much volume he gets at wide receiver. The number 2 guy we got, and this is going to be one of the more wild takes, but I think this is one of the takes that could end up winning you a season. I'm going to say Mark Andrews should be one of the top picks that everybody makes. The idea I have here is if you look at the numbers, Mark Andrews was a wide receiver 1 last year. Obviously, Mark Andrews isn't a wide receiver, but that's exactly what makes it so appealing. You're going to have a tight end giving you wide receiver numbers, which is really hard to find, first of all. Second of all, a lot of people ignore tight ends, fall later in the draft, and they get one that's basically useless. There's not a lot of tight ends in the league that usually give you a good amount of fantasy points every single year. You could have a guaranteed top wide receiver at tight end. Mark Andrews is now the only option. There is no more Hollywood Brown, which was Lamar's definite go-to option. That being said, there are some other wide receivers. We don't know how comfortable Lamar is going to be with them. Lamar's going to have more of a healthy rushing game. He loves looking to Mark Andrews for the touchdowns. I think Mark Andrews is going to have a top wide receiver year as a tight end. If you get him in there, you're going to be preventing other teams from getting that player at tight end. There's going to be less tight ends for everyone else to take. I think it could be a fantasy winning move to get Mark Andrews right away. Next up, this is going to be another hot take. I got Julio Jones. Now, last year, I did say that I expected Julio Jones and the entire Titans passing offense to underperform. They absolutely did. This could have been because of injuries. I said the reason was going to be a little bit different than that, but I said that Tannehill wasn't as good of a quarterback as everyone considers him to be. Julio Jones and A.J. Brown wouldn't mesh well, and it wouldn't work out for their passing offense. The thing with Julio is I think he still has what it takes to be a great wide receiver. He's losing some of the athleticism that he had while he was on the Falcons. He's lost a bit of the speed. Injuries have probably slowed him down a bit, but I think there's absolutely no debate that if you put him with Aaron Rodgers, like is being rumored, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have another wide receiver. I think he comes in and immediately is basically the wide receiver 1, and you have Julio Jones at a wide receiver 1 again. I think he could give you crazy numbers this year, potentially wide receiver 1. Aaron Rodgers throwing to that man. That is back when Matt Ryan was in his prime. It's giving Julio a great chance to have a quarterback that knows how to use his wide receivers. Tannehill was not it, is not it, and will not be it in the future. But Aaron Rodgers still has what it takes to carry a wide receiver into wide receiver 1 status. With that being said, Julio has been there. He's done that. He'll be the exclusive number 1 guy for targets on that team if he can just establish himself and be healthy. I think Julio Jones is one of the late round players that could win you the league. And the good news is, worst comes worst, he doesn't go to the Green Bay Packers. There's already rumors about the Chiefs picking him up. You're going to give him to Mahomes? You're going to give a guy who you can throw a 50-50 ball to on every single play because of his height and his athleticism to Mahomes when he just lost Tyreek? I mean, come on. As long as he doesn't go to the Browns or something that's absolutely mind-boggling and just ruins his situation, you give him to any good quarterback. Put him on the Bucks. They don't have Godwin yet. So you put him at wide receiver 2. Mike Evans is the clear number 1 option. Then you have another, as I said, red zone threat, 50-50 ball threat, Julio Jones with Tom Brady, Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. As long as he goes to a team with a quarterback, Julio Jones is wide receiver to absolutely watch out for late in the draft, who could be a real wide receiver 1. All right, next up we have a pick that kind of a lot of people agree with me on, Trey Lance. If you look at Trey Lance, last year when he had the ball, I had him on one of my teams. Gonna shout that out real quick. But when he had the ball, when he was playing, he rushed it so much. Every quarterback who is run heavy, every single one, is good for fantasy. They end up being in like the top 15 almost every single year. I think it's an obvious choice to take Trey Lance because if the rushing works out, you already have a good quarterback no matter what. Now, if the passing works out on top of that, he's got Kittle as an option. He's got Debo. Ayuk really heated up towards the end of last year. He's absolutely got options. Now, I know the 49ers like to run it, but they're going to scheme Trey Lance into that because he's good at that. It's something that he can actually do. With that being said, you have the high upside with the passing. You have the low floor with the running. Trey Lance is a great option here. And they still have Trent Williams. They have a decent offensive line behind him. Last year, he was kind of really rough. This year, there's been reports that he's looking good in some of his practices. There's been other reports that he was looking iffy in some of the other ones. I think the thing is, you could see Trey Lance easily be a quarterback 1. Maybe even top 5 conversation for quarterbacks. I mean, who's going to be there? Mahomes lost some of his wide receiver options. He's probably being drafted a bit too high. Maybe. I mean, if it works out, Mahomes will be up there again. Maybe Lamar. I see Herbert in there, but I don't know if he's really going to be there. They like running it a bit. He has multiple options, but with how their games are going to look with that new defense, Chargers are probably going to have to lead a lot. Maybe they won't throw it a lot. What other options do we have? Joe Burrow? Yeah, he could be up there. Trey Lance just has a lot of opportunity here. I could really see Trey Lance being the top quarterback of the year. All right, for the final one, I'm going to group them together just like how I did with the Titans last year, being kind of a bad passing offense. I think Zach Ertz and Hollywood Brown could absolutely lead the Cardinals at the very least for the first 6 games when DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. And then for the rest of the year, they're just going to have a better chemistry. It'd be a little bit of a step ahead than DeAndre Hopkins, but still, I think that offense can be good for all 3 of them. Now, the thing about Hollywood Brown, I watched a lot of his games last year with Lamar. He had a lot of opportunities for big plays that just fell through his hands. I don't know why it happened, but for some reason, Kyler Murray is really good at throwing it deep. He loves throwing the ball as far as he possibly can down the field, like that Hail Mary to DeAndre Hopkins last year, or he likes running it everywhere. If you look at Marquise Brown, that's his name, yeah. If you look at Marquise Brown, he is a deep ball threat. He was open last year multiple times. I think there were like 3 or 4 50-yard touchdowns that he dropped with Lamar. He was absolutely selling Lamar out last year. So now you give him the opportunity where if he can just catch some of those balls, and now he's the wide receiver 1 again on a more pass-heavy offense because the Ravens did not want to pass it at all last year, especially if it wasn't to Mark Andrews. You're giving Hollywood Brown a great opportunity to really go off, especially at the start of the season, but even later in the season when he's going against the second best cornerback on the other team. Because obviously they're going to focus on slowing DeAndre Hopkins down. Then it's Hollywood Brown. You give him the chance to beat your team. I mean, he could do it. I think he could, as long as Kyler can connect with him. Other guy, as I said, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz ended last year on an absolute tear, on pace to be one of the top tight ends. If you don't go with Mark Andrews right away, he's going to be a red zone option for the Cardinals. He's still got it. He's slowing down a bit, but he's not much behind Kelsey and Mark Andrews. He's still an absolute stud at the tight end position. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree, disagree, anything in between, and I'll see you guys later.